I just want it to be put on record that I love the term truth nuke. Something about like the exaggerated nature of it. Like, I imagine that that term was synthesized because someone said, truth bomb relatively recently, which as far as I'm aware is a term that's been around for a little bit. But then they thought, you know what? A bomb isn't enough. So they thought of the biggest bomb that we have. And that's another reason why I love hydrogen bomb versus coughing baby so much. My friend put it best. What's so funny about it is that, like, it's not enough that this infant is being put up against a hydrogen bomb. The infant also has to be ill. Anyway, how are you doing? I've got maybe half an hour worth of material in me right now, which might work out because it is brisk tonight. I'm sure I'll get acclimated, but right now I'm shivering a wee bit. I'm sure it'll be fine. But I kind of wanted to, like, because I've had this thing on my mind lately, and I'm writing an essay about it that's going to go up on my blog. But I've said this before, I kind of imagine that there's not much overlap between my small YouTube audience and actually smaller blog audience. But I do know that at least one of my viewers has looked into the description and looked at my playlist. So, thank you for that. And I really appreciate the comment. But yeah, so, okay. I'm going to try to level myself out here. It is pretty cold. It just, like, suddenly started getting cold here. It's kind of crazy. Well, it's not that crazy. It's October. But, in any day now, we're going to just lose all of our cold days. Am I right, guys? I know that's not how it works. Don't worry. So recently I listened to this album, Departure Songs by We Lost the Sea, a post-rock band. And I have a little bit of an interesting relationship with post-rock because it's a genre that I have an appreciation for. It's a genre that occasionally I listen to, but I mainly put on post-rock playlists when I'm taking a nap. That's probably a good amount of my exposure to the genre. I don't know if you could consider Crippled Black Phoenix to be post-rock. Somebody's whistling over there. A cat calling me. Yeah, Crippled Black Phoenix. I don't know if you could consider it. It's fine. Don't worry about it. I don't know if you can consider them post-rock. If you would, they're a great band. The way I describe Crippled Black Phoenix is that most of their songs are good, enjoyable. 6 out of 10, 7 out of 10. And then out of nowhere, they'll hit you with one of the best pieces of music you've ever heard. Examples include, oh fuck, what is that song called? It's I don't even remember or Ellen Geist. Okay, I'm gonna level with you. I don't know how to pronounce the character that's in that album's name. Ellen Geist. Ellen Geist. I don't know. The penultimate track on that album that I'm not remembering the name of, LMAO. Um, Times Are Raging, I think, is the title of the song on their next album, which is a pretty good song, but also just has a section that's fucking brilliant. The Great Escape, that's the album title, The Great Escape. And then the title track for that album is in two parts. The first part is fucking incredible. That song is so good. The second part, I like a little less, but it's still fantastic. The guitar solo at the end is transcended. As a piece, The Great Escape Parts 1 and 2, phenomenal. Phenomenal stuff. And then Banefire, my album of the year in 2022. I really like that album. Which is interesting because there's a lot of really like slow moments in there. I'm still off track. Again, we're just not going to worry about it. You know the drill. Just add some time to your ETA. Yeah, there's a lot of moments on that album of just like not a lot going on. Like songs will kind of dip into just this slow ambience before building back up to a climax, and those climaxes, oh, they hit. Oh, they hit. I mean, there's so many good songs on the album. Damn it, what is the, not opening track, but like Witches and Bastards. Witches and Bastards is a great song. Everything is Beautiful But Us. Wow, I'm having a real hard time here. Rose of Jericho. Rose of Jericho is a fantastic song. And then, of course, I suppose, penultimate track, if you're counting the bonus track. Dude, am I okay? Do I need help? In my defense, it's cold. And maybe that's affecting my mental faculties. Maybe this will be the last recording I ever do, and somebody will fucking find my body. It's not that cold. Okay. Oh my god, I love this song, but I'm forgetting the name of it. I had a little strain because I'm remembering the lyrics, because it's the same line repeated over and over again, like in the climax of the song. I think it's "This Scene is a False Prophet," something like that. The title is something like that. I'm pretty sure that's it. Actually, "This Scene is a False Prophet." Yeah, incredible song. Again, you want to talk about some of the best moments in music? The climax to that song, it's so fucking gorgeous. I see a person up ahead, and I'm just kind of wondering what they're doing. Okay. I think I'll just act casual. Oh, I think their mailbox is across the street. Okay, I see. Okay. No crimes are being committed, probably. It's all good. Anywho, skis. This is all to say that, like, most of my exposure to what you could call post-rock that I've actually, like, engaged with and loved is Crippled Black Phoenix. But I don't even know if you consider them that genre. But genres are stupid, so who cares? I like that that EP by Godspeed You Black Emperor. I, I don't remember the fucking title. It's got a bunch of characters in it, you know the one I'm talking about. And if you just like look them up, their stuff I don't think is on Spotify anymore. Good for them. But yeah, this is all to say that I like have an appreciation for post rock, but it's not something I've engaged with too much until recently, when yeah, okay, I'm remembering now. So We Lost the Sea released an album this year. I listened to it, didn't get a ton out of it. But then YouTube just like, I don't know, recommended me the final song of that album. It's like, hey, you want to listen to this again? And I went, okay. I've got half an hour to spare. The final song on their most recent album, which I believe is titled A Single Flower, is, I think, like 27 minutes long. But, you know, light work. And I like that song. I like it a lot. It's one of those things where I'm not going to be able to, like, completely recount the experience to you. I don't have the thing, like, memorized in my brain. I'm not going to be able to hum the melodies as they come, but I enjoyed the experience. I've listened to it a few times over the past few days. And that just kind of got me thinking, like, maybe I should listen to this Departure Song album again, because I had listened to it before. Because I believe it was like on I believe World Has Post Rock, the YouTube channel, has just uploaded it on YouTube, and I saw it, and it's got a striking album cover. So, you know, curious, gave it a shot, but that was a long fucking time ago. So yeah, just decided to give the album another listen. Didn't do a ton for me. I liked A Gallant Gentleman. You know, there's a reason why A Gallant Gentleman is the most popular song on the album, because it's the most digestible. It's just like 6 minutes long, somewhere around that ballpark. It's, you know, again, digestible is the word. I wouldn't call it simple, really, because making like atmospheric music is not simple. I think that there's maybe I'm projecting, but I think that there's a bit of a like thing around ambient or atmospheric music. It's like, oh, kind of lazy, don't you think? Just stretching this section of music out for like half an hour or whatever. I mean, anyone can do that. That's not true. Because the thing about atmospheric pieces of music is that you have to nail the sound design. And sound design is not easy. It takes talent to do that, and it takes talent to have, you know, like an atmospheric piece of music be even a little bit engaging across these insane runtimes that they have. And I think We Lost the Sea does it quite well. There's moments where they lose me, for sure, but, you know, they kind of make up for it with the climaxes to these songs, which are always fantastic. And the best example of that is the final track on Departure Song's Challenger Part 2, A Swan Song. Part of the two-part closer to that album, just Challenger. Challenger Part 1, I think, is called Flight, is the subtitle. Not particularly relevant. I take a breath. I don't start hyperventilating. So, as you might have guessed from the title, and just like if you take a cursory glance at the artwork, the final track on the album is about the Challenger disaster. The album has this running theme of like people who took it's kind of the case. So, A Gallant Gentleman, yeah, okay. What is the second track about? I know it was, I think, Russians. I'm forgetting a lot today. This will be a really informative episode. Right, yes. Okay, no, I remembered. See, I still have some of my memory intact. Okay, so The first song, A Gallant Gentleman, is about a explorer who ended up in the Arctic, and like everybody who ended up in the Arctic, you know, way back when, he and his crew were starving. So the story goes that he just like walked off into the wilderness to die, because, you know, you're not going to survive out there. It's interesting, isn't it? It's like the Arctic is so fucking inhospitable, you know? It's just interesting, like, looking at these places that humans are so clearly not meant to be in, and the lengths we'll go to those places anyway. So, yeah, first song is about that guy who was in an expedition in the Arctic and made what, you know, he saw to be a sacrifice and died. I mean, it is a sacrifice. This, from what I heard, like reading the description that the band gave, like, he did it because, like, he wanted to alleviate some of the, like, resource stress that was put on the group. You know, there's one less mouth to feed now, which, you know, is noble. I just can't, like, say what is and isn't the right decision in that circumstance, because I haven't been in that circumstance, and I don't know if any of us could even fathom what that might be like. You know, it's a kind of similar thing with, like, when you hear about these people getting, like, stuck in the mountains or whatever, and eventually they start eating each other. Like, yeah, that's horrible. I'm sure they didn't want to do it. Anyway, then the second track is about the three Russian men who, Russian or Ukrainian, one of the two, because I know the Chernobyl disaster happened in Ukraine, but, you know, is my American ignorance showing? The three men that went into the, like, Chernobyl plant after the explosion to shut off some kind of valve, I think, or maybe turn one on. I think it was shut off, but either way, they went into this incredibly radioactive place that they volunteered to, as far as I'm aware. And they went in there fully believing that they would die of radiation poisoning as a result. They didn't. They all lived pretty long lives. But again, they went in there thinking that was going to happen. They went in there thinking that they were going to die. Third track, The Last Dive of David Shaw. David Shaw was a diver, and he drowned trying to set a record and trying to recover, like, the body of another diver, I believe. And then, yeah, the last two tracks are about the Challenger disaster. The main recurring theme is someone boldly going into new territory, uncharted waters, and not returning. Or at least, you know, like, these people being ready to make a sacrifice to go into these uncharted waters and to explore, like, new territory. You know, the Russian story doesn't fit in quite as well, just because, like, you know, it's not necessarily new waters being explored or whatever, and they did live, but this is about, like, theming, so that kind of stuff is just, like, fine, you know. And so, yeah, that's why the Challenger disaster is, like, a part of this piece that is the album, you know. And Oh, Challenger Part 2, Swan Song, incredible song. I love that song a lot. As it's the same thing. The climax of the song is really fucking good, but damn, the build up is so good too. The build up to that final like explosion of sound at the end is magnificent. They do it so well. It's so beautifully paced. It just occurred to me that the plaque on this American flag here reads Jesus. That could give me more content to talk about. I'll save it. Maybe for later, maybe for another episode, we'll see. My ears are starting to hurt, so I'm gonna find my way back home. I didn't miss winter. Let's say that. Like, okay. Add 5 minutes to the ETA. We have this summer versus winter debate. And of course, being the enlightened centrist that I am, I see the points on both sides, but also, fuck you, winter is worse. Living in South Dakota, winter is absolutely worse. Like, the main argument that people make, because they saw that one Tumblr post about it or whatever, is like, oh, well, if you're cold, just wrap yourself in more layers. If I'm hot, what am I supposed to do? Take my skin off? Fucking got him. Checkmate, atheist. No, okay, here's the thing, though. Here's the thing, right? Granted, I'm speaking from a place of privilege. I'm aware of that. I can afford air conditioning, which makes summer, tolerable. Granted, summer is pretty fucking miserable a lot of the time because it does get hot in South Dakota. And if you're outside in I don't know, on a hot day in South Dakota, you want to die. It's miserable, right? But so is the cold. And, I don't really buy the just wrap yourself in more layers thing, because if we're being realistic, there's only so many layers that you will reasonably put on when you're going outside in the winter. Like, what are you gonna put on, a fucking parka and snow pants and winter boots and your thick ass mittens and hat just to walk to your car? No. You're gonna be in jeans, a warm shirt, a coat. You'll probably have some gloves and a hat. And it doesn't have to get very cold for the cold to pierce through all that. It's not as if I'm walking outside nice and snug in my thick ass winter coat. No. It's just there to prevent me from actually getting frostbite or whatever. Okay, being more reasonable is to prevent me from being nigh immobilized by the cold. It makes it more tolerable. It doesn't make it pleasant or just fine. It reaches through that. So I don't buy the just put on more layers thing. I think that the winter weather is just as miserable as summers, frankly. But here's the fucking kicker. Summer doesn't have a snow equivalent. Here in South Dakota, we get a decent amount of snow, or at least we used to. We don't get as much anymore, but we do still get snow. And sometimes that shit piles up quite a bit. And so you gotta go outside in the fucking cold and shovel your car out. And then you gotta drive through the snow, which is its own pain in the ass. And nobody else around you seems to know how to drive through the snow. And you gotta deal with ice. I got into my first accident last year because of ice. Oh, sweet Jesus, that was almost a full year ago. Holy shit. Oh, God. Oh, the unrelenting passage of time. The main hazard when driving in the summer is your car being fucking hot as shit. And again, that sucks. That's miserable. But you also have to deal with the cold in your car, and also driving in winter fucking sucks. And also, you don't have to go outside for an hour shoveling your car out of the snow in the summer. Like, both are miserable, but winter just has so many more inconveniences. It's just so much more work to deal with the elements during the winter. Therefore, winter is worse. Debate me. All right. Where the flying fuck was I? Just speaking of flying, the Challenger, maybe that's in bad taste, I don't know. So yeah, it's about the Challenger disaster. Phenomenal song, love it, fantastic stuff. And then there's this speech at the end. And I'm not going to be able to recount it to you because, like, I don't know, I'm not in English classes anymore. I don't need to memorize shit. I memorized a speech from Macbeth for a college course. And I thought I might keep it memorized because it'd be like kind of a fun party trick. And I thought, hey, maybe it'll get me laid one day, which is probably one of the more naive thoughts that I've ever had. But, you know, a man can dream. But no, I only remember like key points from it that kind of support this thing that I have with the song. So rather than I guess I can summarize what the speech is about. It's just this guy like saying, you know, he's addressing the Challenger disaster. And he's kind of trying to say, like, you know, this is sad, but this is the price of, like, exploration. This is what happens when you're trying to reach new frontiers. You know, these are the pioneers and the explorers of our time, just as this other guy who lived like 400 years ago was an explorer and pioneer of his time. And you know, we're always going to remember them, and as they wave goodbye, slipped the surly bonds of earth to touch the face of God, which is actually a quote from a poem. This person didn't make it up. So who's this person, you might ask? Well, you know, Ronald Reagan. So, problem number one, Ronald Reagan. So this speech that We Lost the Sea sampled was some kind of address from former president and current denizen of hell, Ronald Reagan. You know what? Here you go. This is me practicing my good faith. Look at me, guys. I'm like a good person or whatever. I think that We Lost the Sea had only the best of intentions in including this speech at the end of the song. Like, thematically, the speech fits perfectly. You know, it's a nice cap off to not only just this idea that they're exploring with the Challenger disaster, but also the album as a whole, because it's all about these, you know, explorers or these brave individuals who made tremendous sacrifices for the sake of humanity. But, you know, this speech is being delivered by a fucking ghoul. I don't know how much of a history lesson my audience needs, but, like, I'm quoting things that I wrote in my essay. Again, I doubt there's much crossover. So the way I put it in the essay is that if the, like, dipshit assholes dipshit asshole conservatives currently ruining the country right now are the Nazgul, Ronald Reagan, is Sauron. Like, he defined the, like, conservative ideology that we're still seeing today. There's a reason. What I say is that the only people Donald Trump loves are himself and Ronald Reagan. I mean, he's cited Ronald Reagan as, like, an influence. All of these conservative people fucking suck his cock. We got a movie about him. I don't know if anybody remembers that, but we got a movie titled Reagan, and I saw a poster for it, and I thought, oh, do we have to? Like, it's no accident that film released around this time period. But anyway, the like big thing, you know, apart from all the conservative ideology and all the like horrible shit that brings, the big thing, and why, you know, a person like me might fucking hate him, is that he just like ignored the AIDS crisis for years. I doubt anybody listening was there for the AIDS crisis, and I sure wasn't either. But even just doing a cursory reading, you realize that the AIDS crisis was a big fucking deal. Like, not a lot of people talk about it anymore, probably because, you know, it involved gay people. But, you know, just reading about it, you realize, like, oh yeah, this was a big deal. Like, even though it was primarily affecting the LGBT community, one, it didn't just affect the LGBT community, because I don't know if you knew this, but straight people can get AIDS too. But two, it was bad enough that, like, it extended outside of the community, and even people outside of it were thinking, like, oh, this is like a thing that's going on, you know? There was noise being made about it. People were aware of it. This is all to say there is not a goddamn fucking chance that he just didn't know about it. Something you have to understand, dear listener, is that politicians are not ignorant. These are people in positions of power. It is their job to know things. They know these things are going on, but if they don't address them, it means they don't give a shit. Ronald Reagan did not give a shit that thousands upon thousands of gay people were dying of this illness. That's just the reality of it. I don't really think this can be denied in good faith. And if you are trying to deny that Ronald Reagan was a homophobic piece of shit, I'm just going to assume that you are one too. Maybe that's kind of, you know, maybe that's me going against my good faith values. So, you know what? If you do think Ronald Reagan was not a piece of shit, I'll give you some benefit of the doubt. I'll just assume you're homophobic. Sound good? This recording is getting long. I better cut it off here just to, again, help with, like, file stuff. Just don't worry your pretty little head about it. I'll figure it out. Sorry, got a little heated there, but, you know, it pisses me off. Because, again, it's not something that's talked about as much these days, but, like, that shit, well, you know, something that big doesn't just go away, you know? It has a lasting impact. I remember back in the day, back in my, like, you know, slightly right-leaning era, my anti-SJW era, my cringe era. I had a pretty lengthy cringe era. Some say it's still going to this day. But I'm definitely less cringe than I was before, because, you know, I'm not, like, kind of transphobic. I remember back in the day I scoffed at the idea that, like, there's an impact that slavery had that still lasts to this day. Like, I'd always say, yeah, slavery was horrible, but, like, all this stuff about, like, there's still slavery in, Black Americans' genes. I thought that was ridiculous. And, like, I'm not gonna try to say that there is literally, like, a genetic thing, like, written into their genes that is, affecting them, but that might as well be the case. Okay, so I'm realizing that I'm speaking on things I'm probably not qualified to speak about with quite a bit of ignorance. The main point I'm trying to make is that something like slavery does not just, like, the ramifications of that don't just go away. It's another one of those things that we cannot wrap our heads around. We cannot begin to grasp the amount of misery, the amount of pain, and the amount of damage that slavery as an institution and even just the United States did. I mean, it existed for, I don't know how long fully. Like, how old is the United States again? When did we become a nation? Well over 100 years. Slavery existed for well over 100 years. And then we, like, legally kind of got rid of it. But then everybody, like, found loopholes and found ways to, essentially keep slaves just under a different umbrella, different definition. It doesn't go away. We are still seeing the ramifications of slavery today. And likewise, we are still seeing the ramifications of the AIDS crisis today. A lot of homophobia today is rooted in the fear-mongering that came about as a result of the HIV/AIDS crisis. It was a big deal. It doesn't go away. That's the big thing here. And it was made far worse by President of the time, Ronald Reagan, fucking ignoring it. So, yeah, he's a gigantic piece of shit. I'm glad he's dead. And it's kind of, like, disgusting that there was a movie about him jerking him off. Because that's what it is, right? That movie was a conservative project made to jerk him off and to further promote conservative values. That's all it is. There's also this thing about him, like, there's a term that's used. I know it's not injecting, but that's just the word I'll use because it's not coming to mind right now. There's this thing you'll often hear about him injecting, like, crack cocaine into Black communities to further destabilize those communities. For all I know, that could be true. Doing reading on it, like some cursory Googling, it seems to still be in the realm of, like, conspiracy theory. So it's just one of those things where I say, like, yeah, that very well could have happened. It wouldn't be beyond him, that's for fucking sure. But, from what I saw, isn't, like, enough evidence to say for certain that is a thing that happened. If I am wrong, please feel free to correct me. Drop some sources in the comments. If you think I'm wrong about any of this, feel free to, prove me wrong. I like learning. So, all this to say that having this speech delivered by a villain is kind of rough. It's like, ooh, okay. The way I put it is that, like, regardless of the contents of the speech, just given how much of a piece of shit he was, you just kind of assume that there's some like hatred for minorities and the poor kind of underlying that whole thing, or underlying the whole speech. And, you know, like, it's one of those things where the contents of the speech itself are not like overtly problematic. Like, he doesn't say in this speech, yes, today, my fellow Americans, he's talking like Obama now, I guess, we will execute every gay man on the street. No, like, it's nothing like that. Even if that's what most conservatives want to do, like, they won't say it out loud, at least not yet. It's probably only like 6 months down the line. But it's subtle stuff. For example, remember when I said that part of the whole like thing of the speech is that he's trying to say like sometimes bad things like this happen. It's part of, you know, being a pioneer and being an explorer. So, is it true that many explorers and pioneers die, you know, doing that? Yeah, of course. There's always risks involved. There's always heavy risk involved. There's always a risk of death that these people are always going into these things aware of. I mean, that's the whole thing with the story of the guys at Chernobyl. They believed they were going to die doing that mission. And likewise, the Challenger crew knew that there's always some risk to space travel. And they might have had the thought that maybe they won't come back alive, but they boarded the shuttle anyway. That being said, you do any amount of reading about the Challenger disaster and you'll see that it was preventable. Like, higher-ups were given warnings by engineers. Higher-ups were told, hey, we should delay this flight because, you know, it's too cold. And I'm not going to try to pretend like I fully understand the engineering behind what went wrong. But from what I understand, a big component is that the cold caused something to go wrong. And so they were saying we should delay the flight, wait for it to warm up, because they knew that something could go wrong. But they didn't. They didn't delay the flight. And as far as I can tell, we're pretty certain of what went wrong, and it was partially because of the cold. What the general understanding seems to be from my reading is that this disaster could have been prevented if the flight had been delayed. It didn't have to happen, basically. The 7 people on the Challenger did not have to die. And that's what makes Ronald Reagan's phrasing when talking about this kind of like insulting. Because this was like, you know, I'm not going to say I fully know like what specifically the issue is, but somebody fucked up. There was a fuck up involved here. And, you know, I don't think it'd be unreasonable to say that maybe someone should have been held accountable for it. And so, tiny penis truck. I shouldn't make jokes like that. Trump voter truck. There we go. That even has a nice ring to it. Anyway, yeah, it's just a fucking big ass truck. The carriage of it is like 2 feet off the ground. Like, that is a symbol for fragile masculinity if I've ever seen it. Anyway, speaking of fragile masculinity, Ronald Reagan, Yeah, so like in phrasing it this way, in saying that, sometimes bad things just happen when you're, doing these things, when you're exploring, when you're expanding, humanity's horizons. To say it like that is to completely remove any accountability from like anyone. Because the way I put it is that this was not an inevitability. This was not something that just had to happen. These sacrifices don't necessarily have to be made in order to, like, broaden humanity's horizons or whatever. Oftentimes it will happen, but I feel like we should probably be trying to prevent casualties. You know, instead of something going wrong and saying, well, things like this happen, moving on. Someone fucked up. And we should probably try to prevent fuck ups in the future. But that's clearly not the goal when your understanding of a disaster like this is, well, that's just what happens. No, you got to get to the root of the issue. When 7 people die, you have to go, okay, what could we have done to prevent this? But, conservatives don't care about human life, so it stands to reason. Boy, I just got all this pent up frustration. I mean, I can tell I'm being like, especially, Jesus Christ. Okay, yeah. Yeah, the air's dry. The air's getting drier. I do not do well with dry air. My hands are probably going to start getting like cracked and shit soon. Fun times. I can tell I'm being especially like angry and vitriolic this episode, and I apologize for that. I don't, like, anger is not inherently a bad emotion, right? Like there is such a thing as justified anger. And I feel like, anger at the people who are, carting families off to prison camps across the border, I feel like they deserve some anger. I feel like anger at the people doing that is justified. But I don't know, like, I want to try to have good vibes here. I never want that to, extend to just like ignorance or an owl. Damn, I don't think it's anywhere where I can see. I never want that to turn into like a covering my ears and going la 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 to. I don't want it to be ignoring the realities of the world. I mean, you can see that I'm not ignoring the realities of the world. And I've talked about serious stuff on this, little show I do. It's weird to call it that, but, whatever. I've talked about serious stuff before. It's just, I like keeping up a good vibe because I'm sure the last thing you, dear viewer, need right now is more negativity. Because god damn it, our world is full of it, right? That's why I've almost like shut out politics. Because all of it is bad news. There's no good news. Okay, well, I say I want to put out good vibes and I say shit like that. I'm very cynical. I've grown very jaded about all of it. But, change is possible. There's still good people out there fighting the good fight. Focus on your community. Focus on the places where you can help, Anyway. Yeah. Like my big problem with that is that it just feels callous. I hear that. I hear these kinds of things just happen, and I think, oh, you don't really give a shit, do you? Because it's something that you kind of lose when you're talking or thinking about like historical tragedies, is that these were people, you know? And even when you say that, it doesn't fully hit. So you gotta like really say, these were people. They, think of a friend you have. Think of a brother, a sister, just like a neighbor even that you've talked to a couple times. Like, the loss of those people's lives is the equivalent to the loss of one of those lives. Right? Like, it is the loss of one life is an incredible tragedy. Human life is irreplaceable. And there were 7 people on board the Challenger. They died. They're gone. Their memories, their thoughts, any direct influence they could have possibly had on the world afterwards, wiped out. And they didn't have to be. Like, that's the tragedy of it, you know? And he doesn't make it sound like a tragedy, he makes it sound like a fucking hiccup. He makes it sound like a bump in the road. And again, like, that isn't to diminish, you know, the agency that they had in this. As I said, like, they understood the risks, right? But of course, that doesn't just make it okay that they died, of course. I just, you know, I don't want to undermine the, like, you know, I don't want to undermine their bravery, right? Because, again, they did one of the fucking scariest things a human being can do. They got on a metal plane, they got shot into fucking space. That's a really, like, brave thing to do. They were incredibly dedicated and bold people. And, like, you know, yeah, I'd just be repeating myself, really. Just, like, I don't know, trying to inject some nuance into the situation, I guess. But, you know, it still doesn't change the fact that it was a preventable tragedy. They shouldn't have died. I don't really give a shit that this is part of the process of exploration, or their journey doesn't stop here or whatever. Yeah, obviously I'm glad we're gonna continue the space program regardless, because, like, you know, obviously you can have a space program without people dying, right? And the exploration of space and the sciences and all that are extremely important. They should carry on regardless. But you carry on learning from the failure that caused the death of 7 people. You don't just say it's a thing that can happen and move on, you know? Again, quoting my own essay because I'm fucking pretentious. Looking at Ronald Reagan's words, he turns the Challenger crew not into victims, but into martyrs. And I don't know, it's just a little bit gross. It reminds me of the girl who said yes. I don't know how much I need to talk about it because I was reminded of this. I knew of this story beforehand, but then the Morbid Zoo brought it up in her video on Run, Hide, Fight. She talked to, And, you know, with everything, she puts it very succinctly. Like, she was turned into an honorary warrior of God instead of what she is, a murdered child. It's like, you know, when you put it like that, yeah, it is a little bit fucked up. Like, she didn't sign up for any of that. And also, like, yeah, also, you know, it's not true. We don't, as far as I'm aware, we don't have any evidence that that's actually a thing that happened. So, you know, Christian propagandists just like plundered her name and used her as a tool for propaganda to get this dead child that can't speak for herself. And absolutely nowhere in the conversation about the girl who said yes will you hear a fucking whisper of, you know, a conversation about gun control. Because I doubt they highlight the fact that, you know, this child was shot with a firearm that like a teenager got his hands on. And then we continued to have that same fucking thing happen for decades following. None of that. No, they just use it for propaganda. Yeah, it just feels a little bit like that. It's like it's a bit different because, again, the Challenger crew were adults who knew there were risks involved with this flight. You know, they weren't just a child going to fucking school. You know, there shouldn't be any risk in going to school, right? But if you live in America, you know, it's just a position that comes from like a place of callousness, right? And I understand like a little bit of pragmatism. You heard it when I said that, yeah, the space program should continue. Like, at the time, it can almost feel like disrespectful doing that. I completely understand that, you know? When you're grieving the moment when you have to kind of go back to your normal life, you feel a little bit guilty. You almost feel like everything should stop and, you know, mourn with you. But that's just not how it goes. But there's always a balance, right? Like, the ideal is you do go back to your normal life, but you still like respect this departed person's memory. You still understand and respect the tragedy that occurred. When I hear Ronald Reagan talk about the Challenger disaster, I do not get the sense that he understands the tragedy that occurred. I don't get the sense that he feels the loss of 7 people. You know, I don't know. If you're the president of the United States, day one, they sit you down and go, okay, so we need you to run this orphan crushing machine. Just like, yeah, that's just something you got to do. Like, you know, you're made president of the United States and you're immediately put in charge of whatever war we're waging in the Middle East that'll, you know, result in the bombings of weddings and shit. And you're necessarily being put in charge of this like oppressive capitalistic system. Oh, that's getting a little leftist though, isn't it? And if you're the current president, you're also, you know, going into office knowing full well that you okay, what's happening here is that I want to express the reality of the things that our current president has done, but I also want to try to be a little respectful and not be super crass. And I'm trying to figure out like which side I fall on. Because again, there's a lot of like whitewashing in the way that certain things are talked about in like the media, for example. Like, I don't think you'll hear or see many like mainstream news outlets say, hey guys, 50 children were murdered by the IDF today. It's kind of fucked up, isn't it? You know, you'll see something like the news article that I saw earlier where it's like there was a shooting that happened and one of the victims was killed by police gunfire. Instead of saying what actually happened, the police killed this guy. Right? Passive language, which underhandedly removes culpability for the people who are doing these horrible things. I feel like by softening my language when talking about these things, I might be contributing to that. You know? But I also don't like the idea of, like, you know, triggering people, for example. So, I mean, at this point, is it even important that I say it? Like, I'm sure you know what I mean. I'm sure you, dear viewer, know what happened on the island. I'm sure you know the things that he's done. Yeah, I don't know. This is tough for me. I also just don't like saying the word. I don't know. Like, it just makes me a little uncomfy. Which I suppose is, like, not necessarily a bad thing. But, yeah. TLDR, the President of the United States, almost like, apparently part of the job requirements is to do heinous shit. Even Obama did it. People like Obama, but there's a reason why he's associated with drone strikes. It's like every president has done horrible, horrible things. But our current one seems to be trying to set a record. Like, I'm not gonna fucking go off and try to talk about a song, but the fucking callousness of this current administration is mind-boggling. I guess it's not mind-boggling when you take into account, like, yeah, they just don't give a shit about anybody. I don't know. That's the long and short of it. They just don't fucking care. They have no regard for human life. None whatsoever. And, a lot of their decisions just, like, make sense when you look at it that way. But also, you look at the decisions they're making, and that's the only logical conclusion that you can come up with. Because, again, politicians are not ignorant. Yeah. So, Ronald Reagan's response to the Challenger disaster, little unempathetic. Not a fan. But then, sorry, again, it's cold out, my nose is running. Then he goes on to say, you know, on this day, 390 years ago, Sir Francis Drake died on a ship off the coast of Panama, which I think is actually pretty close to exactly what he says. So, good for me, I guess. Now, Sir Francis Drake. I did some reading on this guy. He is most well known for being the second person that we know of to circumnavigate the globe in like one journey. Impressive stuff. And it's why Ronald Reagan references him, because that like puts him in the annals of history as an explorer, as a brave, bold man who then unfortunately died, uh, you know, doing this thing. I don't know if he died on the expedition that, went around the globe, but he died at sea, right? So, the idea is he died in this pioneering spirit or whatever, which matches the theme of the album. And that's, yeah. Again, the speech works thematically with the album, but it's not really what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about how when I hear about a sailor, an explorer, he calls him, who lived 400 years ago, I think, oh no. What do you mean by explorer? Because what I know is that around 400 years ago, exploring usually meant finding these new lands and these new territories, seeing there were people there and going, this is mine now. Again, perspective slightly colored by my American heritage, but also like, let's be real, okay? Again, this kind of thing doesn't go away. The entire world's culture and history was shaped by colonialism. More on that in a bit. I'm going to pause, and I'm also going to go into my apartment because I'm fucking cold. I hope this episode is at least somewhat listenable. With my frequent tangents, my ranting about conservatives, sniffling every 2 seconds, saying I'm glad Ronald Reagan is dead, and all that shit. I guess we'll see. For now, I'm gonna sit on my hands for a bit. Right, Sir Francis Drake. So, yeah. So the thing about Sir Francis Drake is that, as far as we're aware, and as far as I read, he wasn't a colonialist. Now, that being said, before he was like a proper explorer or whatever, he was on a ship that was carrying slaves. So, he did at one point, in some part, play a part in the slave trade, which is, kind of what I was worried about when I heard 400-year-old explorer, because that's what a lot of them were doing, I did some skimming of his Wikipedia article. It says somewhere in there that he freed like 100, I think it was Turkish slaves. And if he did do that, then, that's cool. That's good karma, right? But it does matter what he actually did. It does matter what this person, actually did. I'm just repeating myself. Because, it's important to a person's memory. Because, again, this was a person. He's over 400 years old at this point, right? But, I don't know, it'd be kind of shitty to, tarnish his name or whatever. As far as I can tell, it seems that in his life, it looks like he did some fucked up shit and was involved in fucked up shit. But also, he might have done some good things. A human being, right? What I'm trying to say is it doesn't seem like he was an irredeemable monster. He wasn't like a Christopher Columbus, Um, That being said, what he actually did matters less when talking about the impressions that you get when consuming a piece of art. Unfortunately for Mr. Drake, he is a 400-year-old explorer. And what a lot of other explorers around that age were doing were showing up in these countries, seeing that there were people already there, and going, this is mine now. Right? Like, regardless of what he did, the mention of him in this speech brings about that association. And, I wouldn't put it past Ronald Reagan to still mention him in this speech and to still revere him, even if he was a colonialist. Because, people still talk about Christopher Columbus like he was this, like, bold explorer and he was the, like, founder of America, and oh, wasn't he so cool and great, when really he was a monster. Like, the problem is that I've seen too many people give reverence to, like, monsters in history. And as far as I can tell, Drake wasn't one of them. But you just can't help but think of that stuff when you're hearing Ronald fucking Reagan talk about this 400-year-old explorer like he's like a martyr. I mean, again, the evangelical right, they love their martyrs. And so that's just another kind of like stain on that speech, you know. Ronald Reagan's callousness, and then he references a 400-year-old explorer, and you're like, oh, so what? I don't know, just like, what do you think about that era in general? How do you feel about the stuff that was going on with people like him around that time? And what he'd likely say is, well, I don't know, like, what did happen back then? Because the current strategy is to just kind of erase the inconvenient parts of history. This is what the administration is doing right now. The administration that, need I remind you, had a lot of their practices and ideologies inspired by Ronald Reagan. So, and that's kind of the those are the two big things with the speech. Like, frankly, the last bit of the speech, the last paragraph, I'll say, is actually like the best part of it. I don't think there's anything problematic in it. It sounds genuinely like pretty respectful to, the Challenger crew. I like the quote, "Slip the surly bonds of earth to touch the face of God." That that's potent stuff. But also he's quoting someone else's work, so we can't give Reagan too much credit for that, and I won't give him credit for that. I think it's funny when people are talking about, like, Donald Trump. They're saying, like, well, you got to give it to him, and I immediately go, no, I don't. I don't have to give anything to him. Like, oh, he did a couple good things in his life. Oh, he used to be funny. That's cool. I don't actually believe in karma, but if we are to look at a karmic scale, it fucking broke. One side of the scale, like, fell through the floor. So I don't have to give him jack shit. If he, fucking inadvertently does a good thing, then that's cool. But that's just it. It's most likely inadvertently because I don't know if I've heard about him doing a good thing this entire fucking term. Yeah, like I'm actually gonna think now. What has he done that's like actually a good thing? I mean, you can say that he's inadvertently made some people realize how, bad conservatism is. But again, that's inadvertently. Like, I'm talking things that he's intentionally and deliberately done. Those mean the same thing. Don't worry about it. Yeah, I don't know. Oh, that's my air conditioner. I forgot to turn that off. I'm just gonna go do that quick. Don't worry about it, all right? This is a professional production. Um, yeah, anyway, I can't think of anything, so I'm gonna move on. um, so yeah, like, you know, the title of the essay that I've got right now is "This Song is Almost Perfect," because that's what I genuinely believe. Challenger Part 2, A Swan Song, is a nearly perfect song. Really, the only thing wrong with it is that speech at the end just carries some baggage with it. And again, I don't even necessarily fault We Lost the Sea. Maybe it's like a bit irresponsible for them to use a speech that was made by like a notorious dipshit asshole. I'm trying to find like different descriptors for these horrible evil people, but I often just tend towards the same ones. Um, Maybe a bit irresponsible for them to use a speech made by that guy, but again, I'm sure their intentions were good. So, you know, they're not politicians, so maybe they are just a little ignorant. I mean, yeah, other than the speech and just those subtle pieces of like, oh, I mean, maybe that's not how we should remember that event. The song is fucking incredible. And I mean, that's kind of a big point I want to get at in this essay and when talking about this song is like, I just don't think that's how we should, like, again, I mean, it's art, right? So all of this is going to be from like my perspective, of course. It's just my thinking is like when I hear the particular things that Ronald Reagan says about the Challenger crew and the particular things that he brings up, my thought is that like again, he's making martyrs out of them, kind of. And I mean, this is what's interesting about art, right? Is that your interpretation of it is going to be informed by so many different things. Like a big part of how I'm interpreting Ronald Reagan's speech is based off of what I know about conservative ideology. And what I know about conservative ideology is that they really love um, colonialism, or at the very least, they try desperately to excuse it, and they hold up and revere these figures who were, you know, dipshit assholes. Even yeah, well, even though they're dipshit assholes, they like prop them up. And even though Sir Francis Drake was seemingly not like a totally ghastly person, like a Christopher Columbus, the mention of his the mention of his name brings you brings with it the image of a Christopher Columbus type, you know, someone who, you know, you could say he was a bold explorer and yeah, he took a risk going to the fucking Americas, I guess, but also he is responsible for genocide and slavery. So, yeah, um, I don't really give a shit what other virtues he might have had. And like the impression you get is that the average conservative believes that all that was like worth it. You know, Christopher Columbus might have been a heinous person, might have done horrible, horrible things. But, you know, that's just what happens, right? And think of it this way, if it weren't for Christopher Columbus, we wouldn't have America. And you wouldn't exist. You wouldn't have all of these freedoms that you have today that we're taking away day by day. You wouldn't have this beautiful nation that we're tearing down by the day. You know, like we wouldn't have all this, would we? And then you ask, okay, so was the genocide like necessary in order to craft the nation? And I don't even know how they'd respond to that because it's a bit of an awkward question, isn't it? Because, like, you know, as per like the nature of time or the butterfly effect or whatever, yes, the United States would not look the way it does today if we did not build our nation on the bodies of millions of minorities, right? But I don't know. I'd sure like to see the nation that wasn't built on the bodies of millions of minorities. You know, this is kind of a hot take here. I don't think cruelty is a necessary component of human existence. I know it's kind of a hot take, right? Okay, so here's the thing. Here's the thing, right? Anger, selfishness, greed, envy, these things that can motivate, like, you know, bad actions, they are natural parts of existence. And I'm not under the delusion that we can create some utopia where people just don't do bad things anymore, right? And I'm also not under the delusion that systemic cruelty is like ever going to go away because that just seems to be the kind of thing that happens, unfortunately. But I don't want anybody making the fucking claim that like we just need to be completely callous towards particular groups of people in order to like function as a society. Like, no, no, we fucking don't. Give me a break. You know, like the example that I immediately jump to is like, I don't know, the sweatshops in China. We get a bunch of goods from China that are made with basically child labor, right? Horrible, inhumane working conditions are used to make products that we regularly buy. And it's like, okay, if we completely dismantled that system as it exists and suddenly enforced, like, you know, human rights, um, would we be able to function as a society? And it's like, you know, sure shit wouldn't be easy. Like, what you'd have to do if you were to do this is you'd have to radically restructure like the way society is built. Yeah. That or, you know, slowly restructure it over the course of like fucking decades, even centuries. But I feel like we should do that. I feel like we should strive to, not have cruelty be a necessary component in the like infrastructure of our society. I don't want to have children suffer in order to like make my clothes or whatever. That's a bad thing. And you know what? If like God, it's a whole thing with America cuz I'm saying like I'd gladly pay like 10, 15 more dollars for my fucking shirts if it means that the person who made it can actually like eat, you know? And then I think, oh yeah, dude, I'd gladly pay more taxes if it means we get free healthcare. But half the fucking country disagrees with me, I guess. Half the country is like, yeah, I mean, I don't want free healthcare because it means I might pay like 5% more taxes or whatever. And that's if the like costs of universal healthcare, social healthcare would be put directly on the taxpayer, which reasonably it shouldn't be. But, I recognize that maybe that's a sacrifice we'd have to make if we lived in a universe where that would ever fucking happen. And then you get to the less complicated examples like I don't know, Gaza. Like, hey guys, what necessary component of society are we upholding by providing military aid to Israel so they can continue bombing children in Palestine and in Gaza? It's like nothing. um, okay. In fairness, if we weren't, aiding in a genocide, then Trump might not get his little fucking strip on Gaza. Won't you please think of the billionaires? I don't even. Where was I even at? I've lost myself again. I got lost in the sauce again. Fucking. Yeah. Okay. So yeah. So like, what you see in a lot of the conservative mindset, or even just like kind of right leaning American mindsets, is this idea that like cruelty and tragedy are just kind of necessary. It's just what's kind of got to happen in order for us to have good things. You also see that with like, gun ownership. People will just fucking say like, yeah, it sucks that kids are being murdered in schools, but it's worth it in order to keep our gun rights, which is you wouldn't get away with saying that basically anywhere else in the world. You'd be seen as a fucking devil saying that kind of shit anywhere else. But you can get away with that in America because it is a very like central part of the common American ideology that we just have to have cruelty, we just have to have suffering, and we have to have needless death in order to have some of these things that we think are cool. And so Ronald Reagan, the like proto conservative, it kind of does seem like he just thinks that the deaths of the Challenger survivors are necessary in order to like, further the space race or whatever, which isn't true. Like, it'd be better in basically every respect if the Challenger mission didn't end in disaster. Because, it would have been a successful mission, in theory. We would have learned more about the cosmos. I know there was like a teacher on board the Challenger. She would have provided, I'm sure, a lot of like education to kids about space and about science and all that. a little boost to American morale. And most importantly, 7 people would have still been alive. It didn't have to happen. It is not better that it happened. It is not necessary for it to have happened. And implying otherwise is just callous and misguided. I think it was going right, like, and I just don't think that's how we should view these things. I don't think that's how we should view history. I don't want us viewing history as like a series of necessary sacrifices, usually of innocent people, in order to build the society that we live in today. I'm trying to get to the like some of the closing paragraphs that I've written for the essay so far that I'm going to try to build towards. I'm making this point about how like history remembers the conquerors, the politicians, the people who do decide that innocent lives are just a necessary sacrifice in order to further their goals. When really, history should be remembering the people like the people on the Challenger crew who are actually like putting their lives on the line to like further humanity, and not further humanity in some like technological sense, not in some like colonial sense, like, this adventure will expand our empire, or we'll get more resources this way, or whatever. Like, space exploration is all about furthering our understanding of the universe we live in. And with that understanding, we can better. I think understanding in and of itself is already a very noble and important goal. But also, some of these discoveries have been legitimately, like, tangibly useful. Science as a, like, thing to strive for is extremely, incredibly beneficial. Like, you want to talk about the things that our society is built upon. Our society is built upon the unnamed people who are doing unthanked labor to try to cure the world's diseases and solve the world's problems and figure out the best ways to make people's lives as like good and comfortable as possible. You know? And then their work gets exploited by some fucking billionaires. So that's how it goes. I should I'm optimistic. I believe in good. I believe good will prevail. So when I think about that kind of stuff, like the genuine pursuit of science, like, we think of the Neuralink that like Elon Musk was dabbling in, and we think like, oh, you're gonna use that to try to control our brains. You're gonna beam ads into our fucking brains or whatever. Like, we can only think of the fucking like heinous shit that he's surely trying to do with that, because that's how it always goes. But I saw this video of a man. I might sound like a dipshit here. Okay, you know what? I'm gonna confirm some things, and then I'm gonna come back, because this is something I don't want to like fuck up and sound insensitive. And also, this recording somehow got really long already. Time is fucking flying. I don't understand it. Yeah, um, I'll link the video in the description. Um, it's Parkinson's disease, and If you're not familiar, I mean, go watch the video. But one of the big things with Parkinson's disease is it causes like severe tremors. The guy in the video can barely pick up a cup of water, but he's had a chip of some kind put in his brain, I think. And when they switch it on, like, it just practically seems normal. Like, there's still a bit of tremors, but it's like manageable. Like, he can pick up this cup of water. It's something that he just wasn't able to do with what was going on. And it makes me emotional just watching it. Because here's the thing. These people are not defined by these illnesses. They're still people. They have personalities, they have interests, they have lives outside of this disease that they happen to have. That being said, it's got to be so difficult living with that. But modern technology, modern medicine, modern, like, medical practices have allowed us to give some of these people like more normalcy in their lives, to allow them to like live better lives. And everybody in this video just looks like proud and amazed by it, because it's fucking amazing. It's fucking amazing, the things that we can do, the things that we have done with, the pursuit of science, and especially the pursuit of science with the ultimate aim of helping people, because that's what it should all be about, right? All of this that we're doing should be about giving as much good as we can to as many people as possible. That's unfortunately not where our priorities as a society lie, but at least things like that are still happening, right? Uh, and, again, like, brain implants, something that you absolutely should be skeptical about. And you should absolutely be skeptical, like, fucking, very skeptical of, like, pharmaceutical companies and doctors and any corporation, really. Because, as we all know, the ultimate aim of a corporation is to make money. They will do that by any means necessary. That being said, I think it is important to understand that a lot of these things, like these medicines that are made, this technology that's developed, is done by people who care. The people in that room activating that chip in the man with Parkinson's, like, I believe fully that they just wanted to help this person. That was their ultimate aim. They just wanted to help. They want to make this technology, not to sell, but to make people's lives better. Because, guys, all right, listen. It's so easy to be cynical. It's so easy to get despondent and detached and apathetic. But there's so many good people out there doing good things. Like, I don't know. I want to say most people are good at their core. I think I do stand by that. It's incredibly frustrating seeing how apathetic the general population is towards certain things, but you know, I think most people do have a good core to them that is being suppressed by propaganda, by misinformation, by misdirection, right? I mean, some people are too far gone. Some people are just completely callous and evil, but it's not most people. Like, again, that completely evil, callous group, tiny minority, a tiny minority. I mean it. Most people have a good core to them, and a lot of people are just good people. And that's why we have the good things that we have. We don't have the good things that we have in our society and in our world because we let enough children slave away in factories, or we slaughtered enough people to, you know, raise these towns and build our roads or whatever. Like, we have all these good things because of people who cared and people who wanted and want to make society better and want to help people. The Challenger crew died wanting to help humanity, not humanity as like a system or, like a particular nation. I believe that they did what they did because they wanted to help humanity as in humans. Because again, we need to refocus. I'm snapping my fingers in front of your face. It's about human beings. Everything we should be doing should be in the service of other people. Just politics is complicated, you know. The economy is complicated. But God, I don't know. I just can't help but feel that the world would be a lot better place if more decisions were made with a core of empathy and with a core of a genuine want to help people. So I think history should remember the people who did want to help humanity, as in humans, not the conquerors, not the people who made a name by fucking fighting wars and taking over other people's land. I don't think we should remember the politicians who spent their careers lying and hurting people. I don't think we should remember the billionaires who hoarded wealth while people starved. We should remember people like the Challenger crew and, all these scientists, all these philanthropists, all these, educators and civil activists who have used their limited time on this earth to help people and who didn't just, tread these unknown waters and taken these bold stances to, like, I don't know, find more resources, but to make the world a better place for people. Is that That's what I think history should be about. That isn't to say we shouldn't learn about World War II or whatever. Like, history is important. I'm just, I'm a I'm an English major. I've just got a very like humanitarian focus on all this. I don't know if you could tell, but I'm not like especially practically minded when it comes to this stuff. And, I recognize that's a fault of mine. But like I said, like if you think I've gotten something wrong or if there's something that I should be more educated on, then please inform me. Like I mean it. I want to learn. I want to be more informed about this stuff. Until then, it's just one of my guiding principles, and I think it always will be. I think we should put empathy and we should put people first above everything else. Our ultimate aim as a society should be to make life as good for as many people as possible. And if you agree, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And also, if you want to read a much more focused, like, version of this thing that I was supposed to be talking about, then it'll be in my blog pretty shortly. I want to get it finished relatively quickly because after that, I'm going to start writing my yearly albums review, and that's going to be quite the project. So stay tuned, fellas. Take care of yourselves.